June 15, 2021, 6:30 p.m., Hawkins County, Tennessee. A young girl walks down the stairs of her family's home. Her grandmother sees her. She's wearing a pink shirt. She goes outside to play. That's the last confirmed sighting. By 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes later, she's gone. For nearly 4 years, this case has consumed investigators, volunteers, and millions of people following the search. Thousands of hours of ground searches, hundreds of interviews, countless tips called in, massive media coverage, and yet, no answers. This case isn't technically cold yet. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation still classifies it as an active missing persons investigation. But the reality is that after nearly 4 years with no major breakthrough, the investigation has stalled. The ground searches have stopped. The media attention has faded. The case is going cold. But here's what most people don't understand. This case could still be solved, not with more ground searches, not with more interviews that cover the same ground, but with technology that's being used right now to solve cold cases from decades ago. Technology that can analyze evidence that was never properly examined. Technology that can find answers in soil, in water, in microscopic traces that human searchers would never detect. Soil analysis, cadaver dog alert patterns, ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery analysis, hydrological mapping. These aren't theoretical investigative tools. They're proven technologies that have solved cases where bodies were hidden for years, even decades. And they could solve this case if applied comprehensively and systematically. For nearly 4 years, investigators have focused primarily on interviews, witness statements, and traditional ground searches. Those are important, but they haven't produced results. What could produce results is a shift to forensic technology that treats this property and the surrounding area as a massive crime scene requiring scientific analysis, not just visual searches. This case is going cold, but it doesn't have to stay cold. The technology exists right now to find answers. The question is whether it will be deployed comprehensively enough, soon enough, before this case transitions from going cold to completely frozen. Before we go any further, I need to know something. Where are you watching from right now? Seriously, drop your location in the comments. Are you in Tennessee? Somewhere else in the United States? Another country? I want to see how far this story is reaching. How many people still care about finding answers nearly 4 years later? And if you believe this case deserves every available resource, every piece of modern technology, every effort to find answers before it goes completely cold, you need to subscribe to Cold Case right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single update, and smash that like button because it pushes this story to more people who need to hear it. We specialize in cases that law enforcement forgot. Cases that went cold. Cases where families have been waiting years or decades for answers. We dig into the evidence, we follow the technology, we track the breakthroughs that could finally bring resolution. This case has been going cold for nearly 4 years. The investigation has stalled, but the technology that could solve it exists right now, and we're going to examine exactly what that technology is, how it works, and why it needs to be applied to this case before time runs out. Now, let's dive into the forensic technology that could finally solve this case and bring this family the answers they've been waiting for. When Summer Wells disappeared on June 15, 2021, the initial response was massive. Local law enforcement, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, volunteer search and rescue teams all converged on Hawkins County. Ground searches covered thousands of acres of rural Tennessee terrain. Helicopters with thermal imaging flew overhead. Bloodhounds and cadaver dogs were deployed. The property where Summer lived sits in a remote area. Heavily wooded, steep terrain, multiple outbuildings, a well, underground utilities. The family had recently moved there. The property wasn't fully developed. There were areas with disturbed soil from recent construction and clearing. Investigators searched the property thoroughly in those first days. They searched the house, the outbuildings, the vehicles, the immediate area around the home. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Some dogs alerted in certain areas, but no remains were found. No definitive evidence was located. As days turned into weeks, the search expanded. Volunteers combed through surrounding woods. Divers searched bodies of water. Investigators interviewed family members, neighbors, anyone who might have seen something. Tips poured in. Each one was followed up, but nothing led to summer. After several months, the intensive searches wound down. The case remained open and active, but the daily presence of investigators and volunteers diminished. The TBI continued to work the case, but without new leads or evidence, there wasn't much new ground to cover. And that's where the case has sat for nearly 4 years, active but stalled, open but without forward momentum, not officially cold, but cooling rapidly. Let me break down what that means, and why modern forensic technology could change everything. The challenge with this case is the environment. Rural Tennessee, heavily wooded, limestone terrain with caves and sinkholes, multiple water sources. If someone wanted to conceal remains in this environment, there are countless locations where traditional ground searches would never find them. Under buildings, in wells, in caves, buried in areas that look identical to thousands of other areas. Traditional ground searches rely on human visual detection. Searchers walk in lines through woods looking for disturbed soil, unusual objects, anything that seems out of place. But in terrain that's been recently cleared, with construction debris, natural erosion, and dense vegetation, disturbed soil doesn't stand out. Everything looks disturbed. Cadaver dogs are valuable, but they have limitations. They can detect human decomposition scent, but their effectiveness varies based on weather, wind direction, how deeply something is buried, whether it's in water, whether it's been there for hours or years. A dog might alert in an area, but if investigators dig and find nothing, does that mean nothing is there? Or just that it's deeper than they dug? Or that the scent is dispersing from somewhere nearby? This is where modern forensic technology becomes critical. Technology that can see beneath the surface. Technology that can analyze soil composition. Technology that can map underground voids and disturbances. Technology that can detect chemical traces that humans and even dogs might miss. Let's start with soil analysis, because this is one of the most powerful and underutilized tools in cases like this. When human remains decompose, they release specific chemical compounds into the surrounding soil. Volatile fatty acids, cadaveric alkaloids, elevated levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and certain trace elements. These chemical signatures persist in soil for years, even decades, even after remains have been moved or destroyed. Forensic soil analysis can detect these signatures. Investigators collect soil samples from areas of interest, areas where dogs alerted, areas near structures or features that could be used for concealment. Those samples are analyzed using gas chromatography mass spectrometry, a technique that can identify specific chemical compounds at incredibly low concentrations. If human decomposition occurred in a location, even years ago, soil analysis can detect it. This technology has been used to solve cases where bodies were buried and later moved, where only trace amounts of decomposition fluid soaked into the soil. The chemical signature remains long after the physical evidence is gone. In this case, soil analysis could be applied systematically across the property. Areas where cadaver dogs alerted should be sampled. Areas near the house. Outbuildings, vehicles, any location where access would have been easy. Areas of recently disturbed soil that were noted in the initial investigation. All of these locations could yield soil samples that might contain decomposition signatures. But here's the critical point. Soil analysis requires systematic, comprehensive sampling. It's not enough to take 1 or 2 samples from an area where a dog alerted. You need multiple samples from multiple depths, samples from control areas for comparison, samples analyzed by certified forensic laboratories using validated methods. This kind of comprehensive soil analysis is expensive. It's time-consuming. It requires specialized expertise. But it works. It has solved cases. And it could solve this case if applied properly. Beyond soil analysis, there's ground-penetrating radar, or GPR. This technology uses radar pulses to image the subsurface. It can detect voids, disturbances in soil layers, objects buried underground, changes in soil density that indicate digging or burial. GPR has been used to locate clandestine graves in numerous cases. It works best in certain soil types, less well in others. The limestone terrain in East Tennessee can be challenging for GPR, but modern systems with multiple frequencies and advanced processing can still produce useful results. A comprehensive GPR survey of the property could identify any subsurface anomalies, areas where soil has been disturbed, voids that might indicate underground chambers or hand-dug holes, changes in density that suggest something is buried. If GPR identifies anomalies, those specific locations can be excavated carefully and systematically. This is far more efficient than random digging based on hunches or general areas where dogs showed interest. GPR has limitations. It typically penetrates only a few meters deep depending on soil conditions. It can't definitively identify what an anomaly is, only that something is different about that specific location. But combined with other techniques, it's a powerful tool. Then there's forensic archaeology. When a potential burial site is identified, it shouldn't be excavated like a construction project. It should be excavated like an archaeological site. Carefully, layer by layer, with screening of all removed soil, with documentation of every step. Forensic archaeologists are trained to recognize disturbed soil, to identify burial cuts, to detect trace evidence that casual excavation would destroy. They can determine whether soil has been dug and refilled even years later. They can identify tool marks, layering patterns, anything that indicates human activity. If investigators identify specific areas of interest through GPR or soil analysis, those areas should be excavated by forensic archaeologists, not just dug up with machinery. The difference in what can be learned is enormous. Quick question before we continue. What time is it where you are right now? Let us know in the comments. I'm curious how many of you are watching this late at night, still thinking about this case nearly 4 years later. How many are watching during your lunch break? How many are starting your day hoping for answers? Drop the time in the comments. Now let's talk about satellite imagery analysis and how it could provide crucial timeline information in this case. Satellite and aerial imagery can be incredibly valuable in cases involving rural properties. Commercial satellites capture images of the entire Earth's surface repeatedly. Some areas are imaged daily, others weekly or monthly. The resolution varies, but modern commercial satellites can capture images showing objects as small as a few feet across. In this case, satellite imagery from before, during, and after June 15, 2021 could be analyzed for any changes to the property. Were there areas of disturbed soil visible from above? Were vehicles in different locations at different times? Were any structures modified? Was there any change to vegetation patterns that might indicate digging or other ground disturbance? Imagery analysis can create a timeline of property changes. If soil was disturbed in a specific area after June 15, 2021, that's significant. If a vehicle was parked in an unusual location on a specific date, that's worth investigating. If vegetation died in a particular spot, suggesting soil contamination, that needs to be examined. This kind of analysis requires access to commercial satellite imagery databases and expertise in interpreting the images. It's not something casual observers can do with Google Earth, though even public satellite imagery can provide some useful information. Professional imagery analysts can detect subtle changes that indicate human activity. They can measure dimensions, calculate volumes of earth moved, identify patterns that suggest specific activities. Combined with witness statements and other evidence, imagery analysis can narrow down areas that need intensive ground investigation. There's also hydrological analysis. Water moves through terrain following specific patterns based on topography, soil type, and geology. If remains were placed in moving water, they would follow predictable paths based on water flow patterns. Hydrological experts can model how water moves across the property and through the surrounding area. They can identify where water accumulates, where it flows, where anything in the water would likely end up. This can guide searches of water-adjacent areas, drainage systems, low points where water pools. If there are wells, septic systems, or other underground water infrastructure on the property, those need to be thoroughly investigated. Wells in particular can be used for concealment because they're deep, they're enclosed, and they're often overlooked in searches. Specialized camera systems can be lowered into wells and pipes to visually inspect them. Water samples can be collected and analyzed for chemical markers of decomposition. All of these technologies exist right now. They're not experimental or theoretical. They're proven methods used in forensic investigations and archaeological research. But they require resources, expertise, and a systematic approach. They can't be deployed haphazardly. They need to be part of a comprehensive forensic investigation plan. And here's the crucial point. If this case continues to go cold without these technologies being applied comprehensively, the chances of resolution diminish. Time matters. Decomposition signatures in soil can persist for years, but they can also be diluted by rain, disturbed by wildlife, complicated by new contamination. GPR anomalies can become harder to interpret as natural processes alter the subsurface. Satellite imagery is only useful if it's analyzed while memories are fresh and witnesses are still available. This case is nearly 4 years old. It's going cold. But the window for applying these technologies effectively hasn't closed yet. It's closing, but it's not closed. If you're finding this information valuable, if you're learning about forensic technologies that could solve this case, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button. Seriously, I know it seems like a small thing, but it makes a massive difference. YouTube's algorithm pushes content based on engagement, and every like tells the platform that this story matters, that people still care about finding answers nearly 4 years later. Your engagement helps keep this case in public awareness. It puts pressure on investigators to use every available tool. It shows the family that people haven't forgotten. So hit that like button, drop a comment, share this video with someone who follows this case and needs to understand that technology could still solve it. Now, let's talk about the specific areas and features on this property that should be prioritized for technological analysis. Based on publicly available information about the property and the investigation, several areas stand out as requiring intensive forensic examination. First, any location where cadaver dogs alerted during the initial searches. Dog alerts aren't definitive proof, but they're probable cause for intensive follow-up. Every location where a trained cadaver dog showed interest should be sampled for soil analysis. Multiple samples, different depths, analyzed by certified labs. If dogs alerted near specific structures or features, those structures need to be thoroughly investigated. Buildings should be examined for hidden spaces, areas beneath foundations, anywhere concealment would be possible. GPR could be used to scan under concrete slabs or floors without destructive excavation. Second, any recently disturbed areas visible in early imagery or reported by witnesses. If there was fresh digging, new construction, or ground clearing in the days or weeks before the disappearance, those areas deserve scrutiny. Soil disturbance isn't suspicious by itself, especially on a property undergoing development. But combined with other factors, it becomes significant. Third, water features. If there are wells on the property, they need to be thoroughly inspected with camera systems designed for deep well investigation. If there are septic systems, the tanks and drain fields should be examined. Any ponds, streams, or drainage areas should be searched not just visually, but with sonar and underwater cameras if depth allows. Fourth, vehicles and equipment. If there were vehicles or heavy equipment on the property in June 2021, they should be forensically examined. Not just a visual search, but luminol testing for blood, soil analysis from tire treads and undercarriages, analysis of any tools or equipment that could have been used for digging. Soil from vehicle tires and equipment can be compared to soil from specific locations on the property. If soil from a vehicle matches soil from a particular area of interest, that's not proof of anything by itself, but it's a data point that helps build a picture of activity. Fifth, areas inaccessible to casual searchers. Dense brush, steep slopes, areas behind or under buildings. These are exactly the locations where someone would hide something if they wanted it to remain hidden from ground searches. These areas need systematic investigation with technology, not just volunteers walking through trying to spot something with the naked eye. The technology to investigate all of these areas exists. The question is whether it will be deployed comprehensively. Partial measures won't work. Testing 1 or 2 soil samples won't work. Running GPR over a small area won't work. This needs to be systematic, thorough, and professional. And here's what makes this urgent. This case is teetering on the edge between going cold and going completely frozen. Right now, it's still active. Investigators are still working it. The public still remembers. The family still has hope. But if another year passes without progress, that changes. Cases that go cold for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years become exponentially harder to solve. Witnesses forget details. Evidence degrades. Public attention moves on. Resources get diverted to newer cases. The time to apply comprehensive forensic technology is now, while the case is still relatively fresh, while witnesses and evidence are still available, while there's still public pressure and resources to support an intensive effort. Before we wrap this up, I want to know something. Do you follow other cases where comprehensive forensic technology could make a difference? Cases that have stalled and need a technological approach? Drop the case name in the comments. I'm curious what other investigations are on your radar. Now, let's piece together what needs to happen next and why this case could still be solved if the right technology is applied. This case is nearly 4 years old. Traditional investigative methods have been exhausted. Thousands of hours of ground searches haven't produced results. Hundreds of interviews haven't generated the breakthrough investigators need. The case is stalling, but stalling isn't the same as unsolvable. Cases like this can absolutely be solved, but not through more of the same approaches that haven't worked. They're solved through systematic application of forensic technology that can detect what human searchers cannot. The technology exists. Soil analysis that can detect decomposition signatures years after the fact, ground-penetrating radar that can identify subsurface disturbances, forensic archaeology that can excavate potential sites properly, satellite imagery analysis that can create timelines of property changes, hydrological modeling that can predict where water-transported evidence might be found. All of this technology is proven. It's not experimental. It's been used successfully in dozens of cases to locate remains that traditional searches missed. Cases where bodies were hidden for 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years before being found through technological analysis. This case could be one of those success stories. But it requires resources. It requires expertise. It requires a commitment to systematic, comprehensive application of these technologies across all areas of investigative interest. The alternative is that this case goes completely cold. 4 years becomes 5, becomes 10, becomes another unsolved disappearance that haunts a family forever and leaves the public without answers. That doesn't have to happen. The technology to prevent it exists right now. Summer Wells disappeared nearly 4 years ago. For nearly 4 years, her family has waited for answers. For nearly 4 years, traditional investigative methods have been tried and haven't produced resolution. For nearly 4 years, this case has been consuming resources and attention without a breakthrough. The next 4 years could be different, but only if the approach changes. Only if comprehensive forensic technology is applied systematically. Only if investigators recognize that what's needed isn't more of the same, but a fundamental shift to science-based analysis of every inch of that property and the surrounding area. This case deserves every available resource. Summer deserves every effort, every technology, every bit of expertise that could possibly lead to answers. Her family deserves to know what happened. The public deserves resolution. The technology exists. The expertise exists. What's needed is the commitment to deploy them comprehensively before this case transitions from going cold to completely frozen. After nearly 4 years, this case could still be solved. The evidence is still there, waiting to be found with the right technology. The soil still contains chemical signatures if decomposition occurred, The subsurface still shows disturbances if digging happened. The satellite imagery still shows changes if they occurred. But that window is closing. Not closed, but closing. The longer this case goes without comprehensive technological analysis, the harder it becomes, the more degraded the evidence, the more complicated the interpretation. The more this case settles into the category of cold cases that seem unsolvable. It doesn't have to be unsolvable. It could be solved, but it requires action now, not years from now. It requires comprehensive deployment of proven forensic technologies, not just continued reliance on methods that haven't worked. If you haven't subscribed to Cold Case yet, what are you waiting for? We cover cases just like this one. Cases that are going cold or have gone cold. Cases where technology could make the difference between resolution and permanent mystery. And you don't want to miss updates on this case or the dozens of others we're tracking, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you're alerted the moment there's a development in this case or when we cover the forensic technologies being used in other investigations. This case could still be solved. Technology could still provide answers. But time is running out. Subscribe now and stay with us as we track whether this case gets the technological investigation it needs before it's too late. This case has been going cold for nearly 4 years. Traditional methods have been exhausted. But technology that could solve it exists right now. The question is whether it will be deployed comprehensively enough, soon enough. Summer deserved safety. Her family deserves answers. This case deserves every available resource and technology, not token efforts, not partial measures, but comprehensive, systematic, professional forensic analysis using every proven technology that could possibly help. The soil analysis that could detect decomposition signatures. The ground-penetrating radar that could identify burial sites. The forensic archaeology that could properly excavate any sites found. The satellite imagery analysis that could provide timeline evidence. The hydrological modeling that could guide water-based searches. All of it. Deployed comprehensively, applied systematically, used properly by qualified experts. That's what could solve this case. That's what could bring this family answers after nearly 4 years of waiting. That's what could prevent this case from going completely cold and joining the ranks of unsolved disappearances that haunt communities forever. The technology is ready. The question is whether it will be used. If this case moved you, if you believe comprehensive forensic technology should be applied before this case goes completely cold, if you think Summer deserves every possible effort, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Cold Case. We're tracking this case and we'll update you on any developments, any new technologies being applied, any progress toward resolution. Leave a comment with your thoughts. What technology do you think could make the biggest difference? What areas should be prioritized? Share this video with anyone who follows this case and wants to see technology bring answers. Nearly 4 years of waiting. The case is going cold. But it's not cold yet. Technology could still solve it. The window is closing, but it's not closed. And that means hope isn't lost. Justice is still possible. Answers could still come, but only if the right technology is deployed comprehensively, systematically, and soon. The clock is ticking. But there's still time. Technology could still solve this case. Let's hope it gets the chance.